and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's top stories with three comedians. First things first, though, let's take a look at what Leo and Nick will have to work with on Friday's front pages. The Daily Telegraph has PM picks Mandon to win over Trump. The extra water bill hikes will follow 36% increase unless Labour kills failing watchdog. The Daily Express has Giselle's brave message of hope after horror. The Metro, I have no regrets on the same story. The Independent, freedom for Aung San Suu Kyi. And we've got the Daily Star, who goes with world's boffiest boffin, afterlife is real. Oh, interesting stuff. Well, let's see if we can make sense of some of this one. We can start with the Telegraph, first of all, Leo.
So the Telegraph leads with the story that the Prime Minister has picked Peter Mandon, a name you might remember from a couple of decades ago, to win over Trump as the sort of ambassador to Washington. It's an interesting choice, given that Peter Mandon was previously the BBC Commissioner and described Mr Trump as a bully and a mercantilist. I mean, your one hope is that, Trump doesn't have a dictionary.
Is that a wig that you wear lower down?
That's an angular merkin.
Ah, that's the one. I knew it was something
he doesn't like bullies, but remember, this new Labour featured quite prominently in it, so they might be pro-bully.
Yeah, so maybe that was actually a compliment, and maybe Mr Trump will take it as such. But it's interesting that Farage is sitting there, has offered his services to act as the sort of bridge to Washington, which would make sense because he's got a very good relationship with Trump, and J.D. Vance is a relationship going back years, and could probably build those bridges. And, Trump has made no secret of the fact that he's going to punish other countries, whether they're seen as friends or foes, if they have any sort of trade deficit. And we're getting into that later in the show, but there is a trade deficit. I think it runs about $1.5 billion a month. So, Trump is going to be looking to turn the screws on Britain, and our screws are already quite turned. So we don't want that.
Just quickly, that was satirical content about Alistair Campbell. Please don't sue me, Alistair. It's Christmas. Love the podcast. But, yeah, I just wanted to say about Mandon. I knew I'm not a genius, but I worked out a few weeks ago that Mandon was going to get this when he did this interview where he said, hey, guys, we need to calm down about all this Trump stuff. Let's get more mature and let's stop it. So I was like, oh, he's getting the ambassador job. Yeah. Because with Labour, it's just a choice of who's insulted Trump the least egregiously, right? Because it's like David Lammy, all right, can't be him. But it's like there's a meeting. Anyone that hasn't called Trump Hitler, keep your hands raised sort of thing. And then you have to get rid of everyone that's still called him Hitler. So Mandelson's probably the least ridiculous choice, right? Obviously, it'd be better if it was someone from Reform or something, but that was never going to happen.
Somebody who could actually get something good to happen. And some people have criticised the choice of Peter Mandon. Novara Media, I think, came out and criticised it, saying that Peter Mandon has been to Epstein Island. But, they wouldn't have gone to Epstein Island if they got invited. I think anybody who got the chance to go on a private jet to, a fantasy island that looked like a James Bond Barry Lair with, Stephen Hawking and Bill Clinton, man, you totally go there.
So you are, just to be clear, Leo, you're pro-Epstein Island.
I'm pro...
And you would have gone?
No, I'm pro-going to Epstein Island. I think the concept of the island is terrible.
If you went there just to chat with Stephen Hawking about Hawking radiation and, what happens when a black hole eventually ends its life... Amazing. Whereas the other people can do whatever they want there. You just focus on the chit-chat with Hawking, yeah?
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
Absolutely.
It's a question I didn't think we'd have to answer on this show. What would you have done on Epstein Island?
Yeah, I would have not gone. You guys would both have gone. That's fine.
All right.
Your choice.
But, I mean, out of all the people to pick, you're right, everyone else in Labour said far worse, but Trump's not going to mind the previous insult. J.D. Vance also said some mean stuff about him, and look, as long as you pivot, he's fine with it. But
I think J.D. Vance is more useful to Trump. He had something to offer. Britain really doesn't have that much to offer. I mean, apart from, we've got exports of Wensleydale cheese, but that's about it.
Yeah. But don't you think there's a reason why Peter Mandon will do really well in America? He sounds like what Americans think Brits sound like.
Yeah.
And they're going to love that. It's like a Love Actually thing.
Yeah, but then most British politicians do. Maybe not Labour politicians. Angela Rayner certainly doesn't.
They also can't tell that
gritty Ken Loach drama.
They can't tell the difference. Americans think everyone in Britain has basically a Victorian accent. It sounds like the king in the 19th century.
Yeah. Although Angela Rayner has slightly more of a whiff of those characters from Monty Python who wore the handkerchief on their head.
Yeah.
So I think they could have spotted that because they love a bit of Python over there. Right, fair enough. We can move on to the Daily Mail, which is the next one. Nick, what are they?
Oh, OK. I thought we were going to do Kemi and Clarkson. But, yeah, the Mail... Kemi's met Clarkson. That's that story. The Mail...
a lot of detail in that.
Nailed it. The Mail has... Now, look who's really crashing the economy, which is sort of quite an immature way to talk about the budget. But Rachel Reeves has been accused of killing growth. So the Bank of England, they're quite skittish, the Bank of England. You see, if you go too hard with the growth thing, then you trust and you have to disappear because you went too big on growth. But if you go too far the other way, it gets all stagnation-y. And this is what's happened with, that's not from like Keynes or anything, stagnation-y, but that's one of my own. But basically, it's not, growth's not happening because inflation's gone up, we've got a weak pound, investors are being put off bonds, they're not investing in UK bonds. So now Bank of England has downgraded its growth outlook for the last 3 months of this year to 0, which sounds quite low, I'm no expert, from the previous prediction of 0.3%, the giddy heights of 0.3% to the crashing nadir. Yeah, we've gone from Singapore to Middlesbrough in minutes. So, yes, no offence, Middlesbrough, don't tweet me. But yeah, Rachel Reeves has ruined the economy. But who can fix this economy? I don't know. Probably you, Leo, but...
Well, I mean, I do like a weak pound sometimes, when I'm hungover, lying in bed. But I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking what they've done. The combination of all the factors that are hitting our businesses, like Shoe Zone is closing down shops.
Yeah.
I think a lot of companies post-COVID were already hanging on by their fingertips. So this is just another nail in the coffin for British enterprise.
Shoe Zone thing's a scam though, because if you have to walk further to get those shoes, by the time you've walked back home, they don't last long. They're Shoe Zone shoes. You've got to go and buy some more. So it's a Ponzi scheme.
That's a good point.
I don't really understand it. That's where I'm going with this. Although the weak pound thing is interesting as much as... Love the joke, but also it's one thing that actually helps the country. It's not great when you're in it, but it does help people think, I'll invest over there because I get tons for that pound.
Well, it helps with exports as well because, they'll be cheaper for other countries to buy. Unfortunately, with Trump in office, he doesn't want to, he's probably America's one of our biggest destinations for exports, and they don't want to take them anymore.
Can't find anything cheery, can we? All right, to the Times, Leo, what have they got on their front page?
So they also have Mandelson and the budget, and they have this story about Giselle Pellicot standing outside court in Avignon after her former husband was jailed for 20 years for rape and recruiting other men to abuse her. And husband and 50 men, sounds like a darts score, husband and 50 men, found guilty of rape in her trial. I mean, truly sort of, not just horrific, but also like bizarre. I've never heard of a story like this. Like really bizarre and horrible ordeal for her to go through. And she's finally got justice, and now she's not hiding away. She's being a sort of figurehead for other people to come forward.
She was the one who decided to give up her anonymity in this case so that it would get more... So it could be looked at. We could learn from this.
Yeah, she was drugged and raped by her own husband from 2011 to 2020. And he invited at least 83 other men as well. At least 83. Isn't this just almost... It's almost hard to believe because it's so sick. Yeah,
truly shocking. We can move to the I paper, Nick, and, well, look at this one. This is not going to make us feel good either.
So, it's unfortunately another bad news. So extra water bill hikes will follow 36% increase unless Labour kills failing watchdogs. So this is Ofwat. We've approved...
Put it down.
Yeah, let's put it down. It's approved a 36% increase in prices over the next 5 years, apparently. And the government has... they're not keen. They've lost faith in Ofwat. I've not been massively following this, but all bills are massively going up, and it's bad, basically.
This is more than just bills going up bad. This is like, of all the industries to privatise, this is not the one, and it's done badly.
Because some people need water.
So, and also it's not a free market, because if you want to change your water supplier, you've got to move home.
That's true.
So, it's not like you can just choose a different type of water. Maybe they should start doing that like they do with electricity. Somebody from EDF comes round the house and is like, who does your electricity? It's like, it comes out the wall. You know what I mean? You're going to send a different electricity into the system to come through the wall in my house? Doesn't make any sense. So maybe they could do that with water. I don't know. I'm not an expert on walls.
The weird thing is it's not even where the electrons come from. You think, OK, they'll just send the electrons, but with AC, the power's contained by the B field.
It's constantly vacillating.
Yeah, I'm sure we all knew that.
But the issue that I've got with water, we think our water suppliers and our water system has got so much worse over the years. Really what's happened is we've started measuring it. So because we're measuring the amount of sewage going into our rivers, it looks like it's getting worse. What we need to do is stop measuring it. Just stop looking.
When you said the issue I have with water, I thought you were going to go on a Lewis Schaefer-esque rant against water. I'm so sick of water. It's so overrated. It dehydrates you. But you mean that we measure it. Is that all that's happened? We just started measuring it. Are you sure?
We do put quite a lot of sewage in the rivers as well, which is bad.
I've seen you doing that.
The fact that advice was given to swimmers, and I'm not like a wild swimmer advocate, I think it's stupid, especially, you know, they've made heated swimming pools.
Yeah.
Come on, get with the programme. But if you want to go and do that, you shouldn't have to be given the advice of swimming with your mouth closed in case you brush against a floater that goes in. I guess that's why they
Who on earth is going swimming in the Thames with their mouth open? And also, that's part of the reason I just don't want the system to change. David Walliams or Eddie Izzard decides to swim the Thames, and they constantly get diarrhea from all the poo that's in the Thames, and I just think that's wonderful.
That's how you're propelled.
Yeah.
You take in stuff that causes diarrhea, and it's like a jet engine.
You're like a shark.
It's basically how it works. Let's try and change the tone then by going to the Star, Leo. What's on their front page?
So the Star has huge, with a lot of U's, if true, world's boffiest boffin, afterlife is real. So a man who's so clever he makes Albert Einstein look like a dimwit says he has proof the afterlife exists, which is nice. But this is just some guy who lives in the woods. Apparently he's got an incredibly high IQ, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do amazing things. Like Stephen Hawking didn't have a particularly high IQ. It was about 150, so... You know, probably
it's lower than mine.
Hours put together. Is it lower than yours?
No, mine was a mere 137, but...
You're held back by those working legs.
Do you know what, though? It can go the other way, can't it? Because Ted Kaczynski, high IQ...
I was going to say, Ted Kaczynski also lives in the woods, comes up with some crazy ideas, and look how that happened.
Yes.
Hawkins' IQ also didn't stop him from... Like, he was the only person who didn't have the excuse of going to the island to chat with Stephen Hawking. So, if anything, he needed a better excuse.
Yeah. And by the way, I love that the Daily Star has proved the afterlife. And for only £1, the paper costs £1 if you were missing someone reading out the prices of newspapers.
It feels like if this were true, it might have been on more than one newspaper.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, the Mandelson thing pales next to Afterlife Real.
I just have to say, in defence of Stephen Hawking, I think if you did want to get away from him, you could.
True. All right. Right, let's crack on. Leo to the Sun, and Sir Kier Starmer has issued a Trump warning. What's he been eating?
So Kier Starmer warns Trump, don't whack tariffs on Britain as he stares down incoming US president. Now, that headline does kind of talk up what actually happened. As you might expect, having, you know, if you've ever seen footage of Kier Starmer, who is not a man of emotion, or any kind of emotion.
Well, height, he's half Trump's size.
So basically what Kier Starmer said, I'm not going to speculate as to what he's going to do. It won't come as any surprise to you that I am not a fan of tariffs, and therefore we have to make sure that we avoid tariffs. So it's not exactly, you know, Usyk facing down Fury at the weigh-in. That is Starmer not making a warning at all. So basically, as I mentioned at the start, we've got a trade deficit, or America's got a trade deficit with us, or we've got a trade deficit with them. I'm not sure. I'm not an economist. But basically, we export $7 billion worth of stuff to them a month, and we import $5.5 billion worth of stuff. Trump sees that as money leaving the United States, and he doesn't like this. It's obviously nowhere near as much as, you know, the trade deficit with China, but he still doesn't like it. And also, America's kind of a fortress economy. It's such a big market. They make so much stuff. They don't really need imports and exports as much as Britain does. So Trump is going to punish other countries that have a trade deficit. And he's obviously going to punish, you know, places like Mexico and especially China, which is a sort of strategic enemy of America. And also China subsidizes a lot of strategic industries to sort of undercut the American market, which is something that, you know, some American governments don't mind because they say, well, look, we're getting all this cheap stuff from China. This is good for the American people. But then, you know, it's bad if you're left with no, you know, steel industry, no, you know, industries you really need in a time of crisis.
Yeah, no, I think it was Michael Porter wrote The Competitivity of Nations that speaks about then being able to get countries to have specialisms. I just mentioned that so that Davey can Google it and try and say that wrong. Anyway, Nick, what's yours?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk stare down was 11 minutes. This one wouldn't be as long, more like 11 seconds. It'd be over very quickly. Don't try and stare down America if you're Starmer. And why are you so against tariffs? I've heard these are the big, beautiful tariffs, the best tariffs anyone's ever seen. Many people are saying it. But, yeah, it's a pity we don't have Farage, because we could have Trump and Farage working together, be much more in harmony than Starmer and Trump. But I feel like Trump's inherent, maybe not inherent is the wrong word, but his sentimental love for the UK would sort of make him, you know, affable to working with us. Even with Starmer, I think he would work with the UK. So I'm hoping they can come up with something. maybe they could bond over their shared desire to bring Sadiq Khan down a peg or two. Because apparently even Starmer's had problems with Sadiq Khan lately, right? So maybe they could bond on that. But it's not an obvious match, is it, Trump and Starmer? On anything, right? They don't really agree on anything, except that they both like the UK. Well, actually, Trump likes the UK. I'm not sure Starmer does.
Yeah, I think Musk and Trump like the UK and like the UK citizens a lot more than Starmer does. Starmer sees them all as far-right thuggery.
Far-right
rather
thugs.
be replaced with Belgians and people from Europe.
Surely tariffs can't be set up to include, like, golf courses or something. This is why we should be protected. Trump owns enough stuff over here that he won't want to put a tariff on his own golf course.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't. You don't really export golf courses because it's hard to get them on a boat.
They didn't mention that in Michael Porter's Competitivity of Nations. Nick, Leo, the Daily Mail, and who is in the migrant hotels? It turns out it's often men who have left their wives at home. So exactly the same people who used to use their hostels. Oh, messed up the joke. I'm talking about people with prostitutes.
Oh, right, yeah. I don't think these ones have got prostitutes, although they probably get enough benefits. So the truth about migrant hotels, they host tens of thousands of young men and cost billions. Now our investigation raises disturbing questions about exactly who's in them and why the government is obsessed with keeping them secret. So this is Sue Reed writing in the Daily Mail, looking at the 220 hotels currently housing migrants around the UK. And she's revealed that every part of England, from Cornwall to Northumbria, Lincolnshire to the Welsh borders, now plays host to a migrant hotel. So this is Operation Scatter. Angela Rayner said, you know, when Labour get into power, we're gonna make every part of Britain take its fair share. I'm not sure there is a fair share when it's something that people haven't really asked for. But she says instead of putting them on military sites and putting migrants in cities, which is where they've traditionally sort of conglomerated, she's going to move them around. And this is sort of touted as a sort of fairness thing. Really, what Labour are doing, once these migrants are registered to vote, they're going to vote Labour because Labour give them benefits. So, and traditionally, you know, those populations vote Labour. So really, this is a way of tilting the electoral arithmetic and turning, you know, some of these nice Tory areas into Labour voting areas. And the properties are currently housing at least 36,000 people at a cost of several £billion a year. And in most hotels, the guests are men in their 20s or 30s who have often left their wives and children back home in the Middle East, South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa, presumably because women and children are great at fighting in war zones that refugees flee from. I mean, it's obvious that they're not genuine refugees. And I think Operation Scatter is backfiring. When I went up to Dumfries for my dad's funeral, there's a hotel there that's been the cancelled weddings and it's just blocked out with migrants now. And they've had migrants going down to the schools and harassing schoolgirls and just, you know, it's not great. And a video posted online shows two signs in one hotel's lobby warning migrants not to touch children without the permission of their parents. Just don't touch children. I mean, I don't even want to be asked if you can touch my child. Just don't touch the child.
Feels like you don't need a sign for that as well. Maybe you just don't without having to, I saw a sign that says don't do this.
Yeah.
Normally the signs say no smoking, but I suppose that's depending on what people have thrown at the hotel.
Yeah, it suggests that, you know, like smoking's OK if it's outside. It suggests that, you know, touching children is OK outside, but it's not.
On the flip side, Nick, it's good for the hotel economy.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a worse betrayal of the people of the country. I mean, the fact that it's done in such clandestine fashion, not a good sign. I mean, in Altrincham, they were busting in the night, there were encrypted emails. You know, the fact that it has to be done in secret suggests it's not a good thing. And the fact that children have to be escorted to the gates, as it says here, you know, by parents, because you've got primary schools next to migrant hotels. In the context of grooming gangs, other crimes we're not even legally allowed to discuss, you say this is such a terrible thing to make people feel so unsafe in their own country. It's just disgusting. I don't know how I can barely it's impossible to overstate it.
So you're not a fan?
Not a fan.